Hello, everyone. Tracie here, your resident business rebel, and you're listening to Digital Business Your Way. Welcome to our special limited series, Launch Style Stories. In this series, we're diving deep into the true stories behind launching, what it's like to find your way the hard way, and what happens when you finally discover a launch style that fits. You'll hear from entrepreneurs who've been through, some miserable experiences, those who are still figuring it out, and those who found their groove and finally feel like they're thriving. Because launching isn't one size fits all, and there's not only one way to do it. And I believe it doesn't have to feel like denying yourself to make money or just feel exhausting and something that you have to get through. This series is all about exploring what works, what doesn't, and how you can cut through the guesswork quicker to find your way and your style sooner. So settle in, because these stories might just change the way you look at launching and your business.
Hi, and welcome back to Launch Style Stories. So you might recognize me from an earlier episode. I am, of course, not your usual host. I'm Natalie Koussa. I'm a podcast guesting strategist, and I am delighted to turn the tables so that we are going to be hearing from Tracie, who you know as your beloved host, you know as an experienced offer and sales coach, and she is, of course, the creator of Your Launch Style. Tracie has been doing this incredible job pulling together and highlighting other experts and going behind the scenes of how other people are launching in their businesses. And I said to Tracie, why don't we flip this? Because your people want to hear from you. And she's like, okay, cool, let's do it. So, Tracie, welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
I was like, despite all of the podcast interviews I've done, I'm actually more nervous about this.
A bit weird being on your own home turf, but
right? Yeah. I know.
Okay.
It's like I love it, and at the same time, it's like, oh gosh, I hope I do a good job.
Okay, so I want to take us back to the beginning, because so many of us know you as a launch expert, as somebody who's out here talking about your expertise and sharing your experience and really speaking from the Tracie of today. I want to take us back to the Tracie where this all started. I'm so intrigued what your first experience of launching was like and how it kind of laid the foundation for what came next.
Yeah. Yes, that's interesting, because I had a bit of a back forth experience as a whole, right? Because I started in this online world by being somebody in the physical brick and mortar world who is trying to take my corporate consulting work digital. And then as I decided to not just work with corporate clients, but actually work with online clients, then I wanted to learn really deep dive into online industry. So I started learning what online coaches did. I started learning copywriting. I spent 2 years online copywriting, and I became a launch copywriter. And then I went back into doing the full-time consulting and what you all see now. So I've my first experience with launching, it's I've been a launch copywriter. I've been a launch coach. And then of course I've done my own launches. And so it's I have all these different first experiences from these different categories. And they've all been so different, but yet there's been this kind of common theme to them, because I would say my first one, my personal, very, very first one of putting my own shit out there wasn't that different than what I was already doing, because I was just saying, hey, instead of me physically coming out to your business, here is a way that you can watch me. Right? Because I was dealing with my corporate clients, and I was, saying, you don't have to pay for my flights and pay for my expenses and all of this kind of stuff. Save yourself thousands and, and get the same experience. And I'm available virtually. So it wasn't like that traditional kind of online strategy launching. It was more of that going to existing clients and what's often called soft selling, but actually in online business, we tend to call that private sell. So that's whenever you reach out to existing clients And then you can also like include your email list. And you're like, I had this thing going on. It's fantastic. Do you want access to it? Let me know. So that would be like my real first launching, is just kind of saying, I've got this great thing. Who wants it? And then letting people know. And I bring that up because a lot of people think that a first launch has to be a 5-day campaign, has to be a bunch of videos, has to be, I was live on Facebook, I was live on Instagram, I was live on all these things forever. And it's like, actually, your first launch is any time that you went out and promoted and told the world, I've got this thing, do you want to buy it?
I love that reframe.
Yeah, well, and it's kind of a different first experience than what a lot of people think, because somebody listening to this might go, oh, wow, I've actually done a lot more launches than I realized. Because I have done the launches where it's like, I want to invite you to an event. I want to have, these kind of pre-launch events, which is what we're doing right now, right? So this series is coming out. I'm dropping it in the middle of my regular podcast episodes. And then at the end of it, I'm inviting people to a live event where we're going to talk about the different options that there are in launching. And then I'm inviting people into the actual program, right? So that is more of that kind of what people think of when they think of launching. But there's also the launching where it's like, hey, do you want to do this private sale? Hey, do you want to have these other ways? So if you kind of, yeah, I mean, I'm now curious if you have, or if anybody listening, like tell me, when you hear these different ways, have you actually launched more times than you thought you did before? So I know I probably did not answer this at all the way you expected, but now that I'm sitting here verbally processing it.
I love it, because I think in the online space, we're taught to think of launching as the mechanics. If you do a webinar or a launch event in some way, if you've got an email sequence, if you've got open close cart, that's a launch. And what you're saying is, sure, that is a launch, it can be, but you're going deeper than the tactics, and you're getting into the purpose, which is, hey, I've got this thing, it's amazing, you might love it, would you like to know more about it? Would you like to join me in it? That's what you're saying.
And it was available for a certain amount of time, right? Because that is what makes a promotion, which is the original name for a launch. That is what makes it that time limited. Right? It's like it's available for this amount of time, like a sale at a store, like a coupon that you get in the mail, right? Like a voucher. It has that kind of time limited, and that's what it was. It was like, I have this available, and it's the first time I'm doing this. Here's this price point. This is what's going on, right? Same thing if you decide to do like a private sale email wise, you can then do a phase 2. And bring it out to either then your social media only, or then you can make it even, wider range and blast it everywhere. Then you can do ads, then you can go public. That like you can do multiple phases with the same product, and you can either change the invitations, you can change the price points, you can change like the support that's offered. You can vary these things, and it's still like the same launch period. You're moving it along in different stages, right? So it's like having many variations in one grand scheme, which stretches it out. It brings out different rest points. It brings out different excitement points. It brings out different opportunities for like momentum and testimonials. Like all of these different pieces kind of like build up and play, but it's all still technically launching. And I have done the I want to invite you to like webinar style. It's just for myself. I've never done the thing where it's like, here's a bunch of slides and I say hide behind them, but I don't mean that in a sense of judgment. I've always done mine workshop style, and that's the same thing for the event that I'll do after this podcast series. It's like, we're going to come together. We're going to be virtual eyeball to eyeball. There's going to be exercises. We're going to be talking about things. There's going to be like live coaching. We're going to work through stuff and shift some things. And then it's like, what else is there, right? It's like you can go off, have this win. You have these realizations. You've got these things that you can work on. And then there's also a container that you can come into to do more, right? As opposed to just like a 30-minute commercial that you're not really even sure why you sat through.
So one of the things that we hear so often is give them the what, but not the how.
Oh God, I hate
And,
that so
so
much.
that's that
That is
kind
so
of,
short-sighted.
but that's that webinar style. Come and listen to me
Mm,
talk about myself for half an hour, then I'll give 3
mm-mm.
minutes of value, and then we'll go into this really extended pitch. But what you're saying is that you invite people into a masterclass or a workshop, sorry, where
Mm.
they're actually doing the work. They actually walk away with something. So
Yes.
let me ask you what I imagine people listening to this, they're thinking, if they're anything like me, oh my God, that sounds amazing. That sounds so much more aligned with my values, with my natural style, all that good stuff. But what about that thing where you give so much value that people kind of feel complete? They have plenty
Mm.
to be getting on with for now, so they don't then want to take the next step with you.
Yes. Yeah. You probably get part of it. Yeah. But I'm like, I think the reaction was part of that answer right there. Um, okay. So let's break that down, right? So first off, what is it that you're selling that someone can be completely finished with it in an hour? Just curious, that's one of those rhetorical questions. It's like, really think about that.
It's a really good question.
Like, you're not sitting there just like slamming them with, a whole bunch of textbook information for them to walk away with, right? The purpose, well, let me say what should be the intention. And yeah, I'm using the word should, but what should be the intention of this is to get a taste of what it's like to work with you. This is an experience. This it's an opportunity for people to see what it's like to actually have you in their world, but it's also a chance for them to find out if they can do something, right? Because more often than not, the reason why people don't follow through with things or do things is because they don't see how they can keep going with it. It doesn't fit into what they keep doing, right? So it's not about, them believing in you enough to spend money. It's about them believing in themselves enough to say, yeah, I can keep going with this. I can actually do this. I can actually see this being possible. So these grand plans and this masterful completion that you want to give them in a freaking hour, what can you actually break down where somebody can have oh my God, I can actually make this possible? This is something that I want so much. Now here is this first little part that can make it so real, so pure, so full to me that it's like, yes, what's next? Now what? Because that's when people want to work with you, is whenever they're like, what's next? Right? That's where that is. And they don't get the what's next without giving them a how, without giving them a belief in themselves that they can do it. It's not about you, it's about them, right? And it's about how much you make them feel like they have this ability to do it. And yeah, the ability comes from your frameworks, from your methods, from what you're showing them, from, you creating these containers where they can show up and be themselves and bring their messiness and bring their realness, right? But it's because you are adapting into their lives. You're not forcing them to be in your world. You're joining their world. Right. And that shift around and making it that audience first style, which is how I teach. It's not how everybody teaches, but you not making them conform is what really makes them be like, oh, okay, so I don't have to make myself, my entire business, my entire family, my entire life change completely into this program, because I'm also in this other program and I'm also trying to do these other things. And I also have these other people in my life. And then before long, they have this entire list and it's like, well, I would like to do this, but how is this even possible? Or I'm going to do it anyway, but it's only going to be possible for maybe the first month. And then it's going to be really difficult. Right. And so we want that continuity. We want that longevity in order for them to have that beautiful transformation, that beautiful result, that beautiful thing that made us want to start our businesses to begin with, that made us want to birth this offer to start with, right? So all of that, you're going to bring to full completion in this, hour, 2 hour, 5-day challenge, 3 days, right? So instead of having that kind of false scarcity mind of, well, then that's going to be it. I'm going to give them everything I've got. Then instead it's like, well, what can I give them that makes them feel like they can actually do this? And it's going to be like, I can see this being possible. What's next? Now, what else can we do together? This is going to be amazing. And when you break it down into that small of thing, then you will find in yourself that you are also capable of more and that you also have more, because you're going to be like, oh gosh, it isn't this one big piece. It's actually 5 pieces. And it's like, oh, and this gives me an idea for the next time. Oh, and the next time. Oh gosh, yeah, okay, I actually have other content. Oh, this could be an entire workshop series. And, and maybe this one is the one I use for this launch event, but, I could record these other ones and turn them into a paid offer. And, and I can do this and I can do that. And, oh, okay, wow, this could actually turn into an evergreen funnel that feeds into this big program and right. And then you start your own momentum and believing funnel, and we start creating these things that come into it, because we start breaking these things down into these realistic pieces that build and grow on each other in this like beautiful way. And
whew, so good.
I also don't know if I answered that the way that you're expecting, but yeah,
so
and well, part of that came from, and everybody comes in with their own perspectives, but because I came with this corporate background, when I started hearing that people were taught to basically come in, talk about themselves for 20, 30 minutes, give maybe 5-10 minutes of quote unquote overvaluing, and then spend another, 10-15 minutes of pitching, I was like, if I walked into someone's like business, had them sit around their boardroom, and I was trying to convince them to, hire my company to do their thing, and that was the way that I pitched them, we wouldn't even get through 5 minutes of the pitch before they would be like, yeah, we're done here, right? It wouldn't happen. Like that's not real. I mean, I guess it's wrong to say real, it's not real life, but like, it's not enough to get like people's buy-in. And then people are like, oh gosh, why isn't this working? Or I can't wait to have enough numbers to get 1 to 3%. It's like, why are we going for scraps? Why are we thinking volume is the only way to have anything? It's like, maybe there's something wrong with the formula instead of something wrong with our production, right? So again, it's like, let's turn this around to the people that are blessing us with their time and their attention, instead of just like spitting out the same old shit.
I love this. So we've dived into how your launch can make your potential customers or clients feel. Yeah. So instead of panicky, I'm missing a piece, I'm running out of time, I have to buy out of desperation, which is how the traditional launch structure does make potential customers and clients feel often.
Yeah.
What you're saying is, no, it's about showing them what's possible. It's about showing them how your work is going to fit into the business, the life, the energy that they want and that they already have. I absolutely love that. It's such a fundamental paradigm shift. And what it's making me wonder is, so your future clients, customers, your community are feeling all kinds of jazzed up and feeling like things are possible and knowing what they need to have in place and wondering what's next. How have you seen this style of launching make the people who are launching feel? Right, the business owner who is inviting people to join their world. How does it make them feel?
Yeah, it brings that sense of completion, right? It has that way of also releasing that pressure of bringing in that enjoyment. And I wouldn't say awakening, but of allowing back that creativity, right? And then it's more like, oh gosh, this is fun. Oh, and I had this idea and I can see where it fits in, versus feeling like I can't do things or that things aren't working, right? Because there's 4 different parts with the elements to a launching style. And the amount of times that I would hear people say it was successful, but people are always like, well, my launch was successful, but. And so I would ask, well, then what are you using to assume that it was successful? If you're following it with the word but, what are you framing it as success? And they're always like, well, it made the money, or I technically hit industry standards. or they're feeling guilty for not, feeling overly blessed, right? And it's like it's okay to want more. You're allowed to want more. So it's yes, sales are a big part. That's why we do promotions. That's why we have these pieces where it's like, let's have this big event to bring people in. That's why marketing exists. It's like, that's why we do these things. So yes, there's that sales piece, but then we do need to have that marketing piece that allows that creativity, that allows that fun, that allows that spirit coming in. But then we need that community part. And by community, I mean our audience piece. Who are we attracting? What are we wanting to have? How are we wanting them to feel? But then there's also our own energy, right? There's ourselves. So whenever we're thinking about like our launch debriefs, our promotions, we actually need to be judging them by all 4 elements. And where is something kind of dying off? Where are we ignoring it? If you're getting a whole bunch of people in, but then they're not sticking it out, or they're not really enjoying it, or the engagement's not there, or you're not getting the feedback, right? Are they buying only because of FOMO? Versus that just being there for the personalities that are like, oh, I want to do it because everybody else is doing it. And that's fun for them. Instead of, oh, well, if I don't do it, then I'm a shithead, right? That's not fun for them. Yeah. Because there's the kind of people who actually enjoy standing in line because other people are in line. And then there's the kind of people who are like, oh, if I don't do this, then I'm missing out on something. I'm a horrible person. Woe is me. Right. So that's like 2 sides of the same coin. So you want to hit on the parts where it's like, this is a fantastic party. Yes, of course you want to be there, but you don't want to hit on but if you're not there, then, well, you're a shitbag, right? So, yeah. So there's the good side and the bad side, and we have to watch ourselves to make sure that we're hitting on the good parts and not the bad parts, right? And it's like, how are we making the people feel? Then it's like, how is that making us feel? Are we talking ourselves into feeling good about what we did because we're only hanging our hat on one side? Including, are we only feeling good about our personal energy because it actually felt rested and relaxed, while secretly we're not wanting to admit that we actually hated that it didn't bring in what we wanted? That we actually wanted our community to be bigger and it didn't, but we're like, well, at least I did this, but. Mm-hmm. So thinking about where are all those places that you're saying but. And again, you don't have to feel bad about it. Those are just those indicators that go, okay, which of these 4 parts is kind of missing, and where do I need to kind of put attention to bring it into harmony, right? To kind of let them play where they need to play for my own special mix, because the different ones will have different priorities for the season that we're in and for our own personalities. So which ones kind of need to have that bigger voice, that bigger play for what it is that we're working in, right? And whenever you get that right mix, that's what I see with the people that I work with, that they're like, I don't actually have a but this time. Like there's not a piece of that that's missing. Yeah. I mean, especially like what we were saying with scarcity, it gets a bad rap, as it should, but there's also exclusivity that we get to play with. There's that happier side of things where it's like, oh, we have these bonuses of time, of getting in these different container pieces, of having these different elements that come in versus, do it now if you really love yourself, kind of messages that, how are you making people feel? And as long as you're going into it intentionally and that is the brand and that is the style you want to do, then just own it. That if that's how you want to be and that's how you want your people to feel, then you do you. But like, don't do it accidentally, right? So it's those kinds of pieces where it's like, oh, I was using these mechanisms because it was in a template, because I was told to. I didn't really like it. I couldn't figure out why. And now I see it's because I realized it was making my audience feel like this. It's because I was making people buy things in this way. And now I'm able to make those connections. I'm able to, like connect those dots and be like, okay, let's remove this piece and replace it with something that actually feels more like me, right? So that way it all like fits together. Yeah.
I love that. So it is so clear that you live and breathe launching. That you think of, you don't, we've said this before, but you don't just think of it as a strategic option. You think of it as these 4 different elements that you can pull on and flex and lean into one or lean into the other as you go, that creates this community experience, that creates an experience for you as the business owner. And yes, of course, causes sales, creates, that's one of the
Oh yeah.
beautiful things about launching is you can,
You gotta have sales.
yeah, you can, you can have like a real spike in your sales of all of these people moving into your business all in one time, and the energy and the revenue that brings. So it's so clear your relationship with launching. How did then that lead you to start and design your launch style as a program?
And a lot of it came from those conversations, right? It came from hearing people say, well, I actually haven't touched my digital course because I can't bring myself to do a webinar. And it's like, well, wait a minute, you don't have to use a webinar just to sell a course, right? And it's like, well, I love my group coaching, but I want to open all the time. So I don't know how to tell people about it without sending out an email every single week, or how do I do an event for it? Or how do I do it? It's those extremes, right? It's like people think that their only options are these big, huge, always on, live energy intensive events, or they have to go very automated, funnel heavy, evergreen. And these are these two like polar opposite ways that people think launching is, that it's all or nothing, that it takes everything out of you. It has to be the set number of days. You have to either do it every single month or once a year, or it has to be always on and evergreening. And it's like, well, no, actually there's an entire world that like an entire world of options that you have here. Right. And there's actually different elements within those that you have. And you have choice within all of those elements. Right. And part of that is exciting. And then naturally, part of that can be overwhelming because there's so many choices. So it's like, okay, how can I make this where we keep the excitement, but get rid of the overwhelm? Yeah. Because overwhelm is just another word for too much, not knowing what to do. Right. That's whenever we're just kind of flooded and it's like, data overload.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do we, yeah. Right. And you can help with that by bringing in structure, by bringing in frameworks, by bringing in elements. So these are the kind of things that I do with people in conversations that I've done with my one-on-ones. And it's like, okay, how can I actually make this where it makes enough kind of formulaic sense that I can actually bring a group through it at the same time, right? And that was the challenge for me. And this has actually always been that challenge in my business. The same thing with like going back to those consulting days and sending out an email and being like, hey, instead of me coming to you, here, you can log in and watch me anytime, right? That kind of individualization has always been simpler for me versus like, wait, how am I going to take 50 people through this at the same time? Because this person needs this and that person needs that, and because we're all snowflakes, it's, but I see that in it, while at the same time, I see that it's all these same 5 pieces that we get to play with, but the little tactics change. It's the same strategies, and then we get to play with the tactics. And that was the part that I broke into and got to challenge myself and got to lean into my biz besties and got to talk to people and talk to my coach and be like, I want to do this. This is the idea, but does this only make sense in my brain? Or does this make sense when I actually want to bring this out to other humans who have to also consume this? Right? Because we can change on a dime. We can bring up whatever metaphor is needed. We can, alter things when you're just one-on-one with person. But when you kind of lose somebody in a crowd, or when you need to record something, or when you need to make one workbook that, fits them all, it can get a little complicated, right? So we all have those pieces in ourselves that are kind of easier versus not. Yeah. And that's that one for me. So I call on the people that know instructional design, that know how to do these things. And I'm like, help me. Help me. So why did I do it? Was because I wanted to be able to do this more often, especially after last year, 2024. There was the amount of conversations that I had over and over again. Yeah, but what's going to work next year? Yeah, but so many things changed. Yeah, but, right? You got to... I guess it's my favorite word because anytime I hear this, I'm like, oh, I can make a program. What's somebody talking about? I'm like, here's a training. What's the conversation? And then it's like, okay, now here's my challenge. This is where I get to grow. This is where I get to stretch. What can I do to fit that in and to help? And I just wanted people to know that they have options, but not get so burdened by the options that they fall back into the promises of this is the only way to do it. Right.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah. So I was like, how can I do this? And that was where this is created, because your style method that is my coaching method. I have it for offers, for sales, for community building, and for launching. But instead of it just being behind closed doors of private coaching, it's like, let's make this group. Let's make this out there. So that way it's not just people who can do some one-on-one time, but can also kind of go through this whenever they need it. And let's bring these conversations to light so people know that they're not alone, that this is common, that no matter what size of business you are, no matter how long your business has been around, people have these same conversations. Like the amount of people last year that asked me about, but what is going to happen next year? But what's going to work next year? But these things didn't happen. Now what? Were people that have been working 12 years in online, that have been around 7+. Some people did like 8 launches just in one calendar year. Like these aren't people that have been around just 3 months, right? It's the same conversation no matter what, because we're always innovating. We're always figuring out, we're always trying to figure out what's going on. Yeah. Like no one here is alone. So we need this hive mind. We need to be out there together. And the more that you're in touch with yourself and the people that you want to work with, then the more fluid that can be. And the more inspired you get to be. And the more you get to go, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to do this, but these other things I can bless and release and ignore, right? Because it's not about like figuring out your launch style isn't about replacing anything that can ever possibly come. It's about knowing how to communicate what you want to do. So that way, when support opportunities come in, whether from like mentoring or like having people on your team, then you're a better communicator. And you know what you want to invest in versus what you're like, oh, I don't need this. And that brings so much relief and so much excitement into building that business. And like, because you're not figuring those things out anymore. Instead, you're coming from that place of empowerment of this is what I like. This is where we're going. This is how we're doing it. Now, what can it look like? Now, what can we do? So when people have these innovative ideas, you're like, oh, this will fit perfectly. Teach me how to do this. Yes, let's implement that. Oh, can you do this? Beautiful, right? And then it's just accelerates, more momentum. Let's go.
I love that. Can you give us a couple of examples of really creative elements that some of your clients have put into their launches?
Yeah, I mean, they're very personal, right? So everything from like people who enjoy podcasts, it's like, let's get those going, to individual calls. Because there's nothing wrong with doing the things that are more high touch, like with having voice notes, with having those personal outreaches. And this, I will say, is actually part of, I was going to say a problem, and then now I'm like, I need to edit myself and take that language out. But because I'm like, how else would I rephrase this? But whenever you have these conversations so often, you're like, well, none of this is new. None of this is different. And I'm like, well, that's not true to the person who's listening. So it's things like, I'll always be transparent and open. But it's like, I have this new program out and I want to talk about it with people who are looking for these things. Who wants to talk about it? So it's actually like a one-on-one launch. Right. And you're like, well, wait, how is that different from a discovery call? How is that because it's that promotion piece. It's like, how open are the doors? What else are you having going on? And so I've had people who are doing it where they're still using affiliates. They are still doing social media pushes. But instead of pushing people to a group event, they're pushing people to a call. There's I would say now classic, of watching a recording or coming to an event, but going to an application instead of going straight to a checkout page, right? And it's like, well, what does that serve for you? Where do you want to be with these things? And what is it where it's like, this is a yes, but actually this part's a no, because it's not an all or nothing, right? It's like there's nothing wrong with using ads, and there's also nothing wrong with having calls, and there's nothing wrong with having voice notes, and there's nothing wrong with doing recorded elements, and there's nothing wrong with having live Q&As, and there's nothing wrong with having communities. And that's the part where it's like, it's not one set of 5 things that you can do, and you have to leave the other pieces off. Instead, it's like looking at it like, well, I often say it's like Legos. You get a little bag of Legos and you get a little instruction card, and it's like, with these blocks of Legos, you can make a helicopter. And then you're looking at it and it's like, well, actually with these block of Legos, I can also make a house, because it's the same Legos. I'm just going to apply them in a different way. Right. And it's like, oh, and what else can I do with these same Legos? I can also do these different pieces with it. And so it's like, what do I want? What do I not want with it? So I don't, that probably wasn't as concrete as you wanted, but I'm like, some of these things are so popular and so well known now that I always stump myself trying to think of examples, because this came up on another interview I did, and I'm laughing at myself. So I'm like, I need to get better at having like some of these off the top of my head. But where they did, they did a workshop, and then they actually offered private calls after the workshop, which is a bit more old school, instead of it just being DM only or not offering those at all. And then I've seen applications that go to videos instead of, so it's all in, what does the person need to know before they buy, right? How much information do they need? And what is the intimacy level of your offer? What are you dealing with? Because some of the people who come to me, they're trauma coaches. So that's a very different high touch point than if you are somebody who's teaching, say, Pinterest, right? And I also have had clients who do like accounting and bookkeeping. So while that's a bit more formulaic, there is definitely a bond of trust there, right? Sure. And there's an intimacy level of letting somebody that much into your business, right? So there is like, here, this is me working with people. This is what it's like whenever I have been on interviews. Here is a list of people that you can talk to that have worked with us before. Here's a button. And that is not just like sitting idly on their website, but they actually actively use all of this in their launch campaigns. And you're like, wait, launching bookkeeping services? Yes, you can actually do a promo and launch your services, not just your digital products, not just your coaching. So that's actually probably something different, is thinking about the offer that you're launching and not just how you're launching. Because some people think that launching is only for like a digital product or only for a coaching program. It's like, no, you can launch your one-on-ones. You can launch your services. You can create a marketing campaign around anything, around books, around all the things that you have, a podcast, anything.
I love that. I love the distinction between, are you selling Pinterest, which is very strategic, probably less emotional, less vulnerability there, and also less risk. If that strategy doesn't work, no worries, you can try something else. Whereas if someone fucks up your bookkeeping, there's a bigger risk there.
It's a very big risk, yeah.
Who you're choosing. So I'm loving that you're bringing that into it as well from the client's buyer decision making. Really thinking of the psychology of where's the risk, where's the vulnerability, where's the depth of relationship that they need to have with me in order to make it a really easy, a really enthusiastic yes. So I love that you're weaving all of that into launches, whereas typically in the online space, we would think about that in terms of kind of selling one-to-one. I'm a bookkeeper. I've got space for 2 clients next month, so I'm selling one-to-one. I'm not thinking of it in terms of a campaign, but I can really see how thinking of it in terms of a campaign for done-for-you services, or for the kinds of services that aren't traditionally launched, think of the brand authority that creates. Think of the buzz that creates in your community. Think of the value that it adds to people that may never become your client. You may never know they're paying attention to you, but they've understood something different about bookkeeping, or they've been de-shamed around their money situation, and then they go off and make better decisions. That's really exciting that can come from launching.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because launching is a sales mechanism, right? So a lot of times people think of marketing and then they only think of marketing. And it's like, okay, marketing and sales, they're best friends, but they're not the same thing. So we have to let them work in tandem, but not accidentally ask one to replace the other, right? So it's like, if we need to bring sales in, then let's create a promotion around what we need to create sales in. And in your one-on-ones, your digital product that's just sitting there, that is open all the time, right? The workshops that somebody can go onto your website and they can see your little store and they see your list of all the things. Great. Let's promote those in a cycle. Let's have the big groups that come on, twice a year that you open the doors for, but then you have all this other stuff that's sitting there those other 6 months. So what are you going to do with those? You can have these things that work, again, with your energy, with your audience, with the offer. It all has to be in harmony of what it is that you're working on and with what makes sense, right? These things aren't, they're not in isolation. They work in with each other, and that's what helps you get that consistent selling from multiple avenues. And that's how you get that real diversification in your business that creates sustainability, instead of just waiting for big things or waiting for consistent things from retainers or consistent things from payment plans or, from year-long contracts, right? Depending on the type of business that you have. You intentionally create these using a different product mix and a different selling mix that you orchestrate throughout the year. And then you let these things like build up and work. And over time, that's what creates that stability within your business. And then it just kind of builds and builds and grows, which again gives you that financial foundation that then you're like, oh, and I can do this. Oh, and I can do that. Oh gosh, and this would be so much fun, right? And that's what makes you be like, I got a big ass business. This is amazing.
I love that. So what you're telling me is it doesn't need to be, oh my God, this launch needs to work. Oh my God, every single bit of energy is going into this one launch. Oh my God, stress. The launch happens. And then whether it goes well, whether it doesn't, you collapse on the other side. And then the cycle starts again. That's what we see so often. Whereas what you're saying is, no, just plan out. And I love how you're bringing your offer ecosystem into this. I love how you're bringing your personal energy into this. I love how you're taking all of the emotion out of it in a good way, in that it doesn't have to be so full of hype and really kind of pulling on your energy in order to sell through a launch. It can be this real, okay, we're doing this campaign this month, we're doing that campaign the next month. So for your audience, it can just be this really exciting relationship with your business. What have they got going on now? Oh yeah, cool. That wasn't quite right for me last month, but this is exactly what I'm looking for. Yeah. That's, I imagine, the kind of relationship that this creates. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And then it allows the audience to get to pick and mix according to their timing instead of you trying to shove them into your timing all the time. Right. Which doesn't always work. And it shouldn't work. It shouldn't work for that healthy relationship. Yeah. And these are the kind of things where like you shouldn't worry about having them all at one time, but you should allow them to build and grow. Right. So maybe at first, the only thing that you have the capacity to create is the one big thing. And then you're trying to make all the others. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, now I can fill in this gap. Now I create this other gap. Well, now that I have these little gaps done, then I can do this big one. And so it's like, okay, well, what do all of these look like? And now, like, where can I have these little fun pieces, and where can I have these other pieces? And whenever we look at the difference between like the structure and the emotion, we're creating harmony here, because it's whenever one is kind of lacking, then the other one gets to kind of like, you get to lean on it. I wouldn't really say like pick up the slack, but like you get to lean on it. So whenever like you're having all the feels and everything feels kind of heavy, or like everything that's not in your business is going on, then it's like, that's okay. You can have that space, you can have that capacity for that emotional time and for like that personal energy need, because you have that structure to lean on, right? And then whenever you're building that business structure, because it doesn't quite exist yet, and that's an area that isn't quite there, well, you have that excitement needs to come in, and that intensity of, oh, this is going to be good and this is going to be so great, to kind of help you get through the point of building that infrastructure. And then you're at a point of business maturity when you have them both, and then they get to play off each other. And then you're like, oh, and I have this going and I get to build on top of that. And I got this going and I get to rest and I get to play and I get to do all these things, right? Because I don't tend to use the word balance. I use the word harmony, right? Because some will be louder than the other, and some will be softer, and some will be at this pitch and the other one will be at that pitch, right? It's not about this constant fallacy of balance where they have to be equal all the time. It's about harmony where one gets to play up while the other one is at its own frequency and at its own play point. Yeah.
I love that. So if there are people listening thinking, oh my God, give me the harmony, how do I get involved? Tracie, how do people find out more about your launch style?
Yes. So if you do want to be in this personalized program, right, that is designed to help you find that launch strategy, that of course is that beautiful blend of sales and marketing that really gets to fit your energy, your goals, your season of life, your season of business, instead of these kind of like one size must fit you and must fit your humans. And discover what works for you so you can get the support, you can get those results that you're really dreaming of. Then join us, use the link in the show notes, go to traciepatterson.com/YLS for your launch style. And we would love to have you. I would love to support you and be with you and hang out with us throughout this whole limited series. But, we are here, and yeah, I love all these things. I love this conversation. Thank you, Natalie, for talking to me through all of this and putting me on the spot. And I'm like, I hope I answered the questions right. But yes.
You were wonderful. You have given me.
And I'm like, I need my pat on the head.
No. You've given me so many just like subtle mindset shifts and subtle kind of glimpses as to what could be possible for launching, and how launching can support your entire offer ecosystem.
Right.
Something about the way that you're explaining it has just shifted kind of what's possible for me. So I'm sure that if that's happened to me, of course it's happened for some listeners as well. So thank you so much. And
of course.
That's us.
I love it.
That's all right.
Good.
That's
yes.
right.
Yeah, I love that. And see how like you can have these conversations and it doesn't feel like, oh gosh, I've told him everything. Now there's nothing left, right? There's so much more. So give all of your people the perspective shifts. Give all the people those kinds of like opportunities to go, oh my gosh, what's next? Oh my gosh, what else is out there? Like, this is so much fun, because I hope you listening, you have a notebook of ideas. You have a notebook of things to play with. But at the same time, I've got the frameworks, I've got the supports, I have lists of options and things that you can do, so that way you don't accidentally run into that overwhelm of choice. And come play with us inside of your launch style. And again, thank you, Natalie.
Thank you, Tracie.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Launch Style Stories, and I hope it sparked something for you. If you've been listening and thinking, I need to find my way to launch without burning out, second guessing, or forcing myself into someone else's formula, well, that's exactly what your launch style is here to help with. Inside the program, we cut the trial and error and help you create a launch approach that fits your strengths, your business, and your energy, so selling never feels like an uphill battle again. Head to traciepatterson.com/YLS to learn more and join us. And if you loved this series, let me know. Share your biggest takeaway, DM me, or leave a review. It helps more business owners like you find the show. I'll see you inside your launch style.